Hi, this is Cathy for TransByDef, and this week we have a very important topic. The topic for the week is, how do you tell your family and friends that you are transgendered? Well, I think I am an example of how you don't tell your family and friends that you're transgender. When I was 12 years old, I went to my mother and I said, I feel like I am a woman. She looked at me and she said immediately, we're going to counseling. When I was 20, I went in and sat down with my mother on her bed and said, Mom, I am going to transition to become a woman. Her reaction did not change from when I was 12 and 13. She said, well, we need to get you into counseling because this can't happen. I really, in looking back at it, feel that the direct approach to telling your parents that you're transgender is to write it in a letter so that they have time to digest the idea that you want to change from being your birth sex to the sex that you feel inside. When I was upfront and direct with my mother, it did not work. I will say, on the other hand, when I told my wife that I was going to transition, we sat down in the quiet of our own home, and I told her that I could just no longer be a woman, and I said it's because of the depression and because of my feelings about suicide and about other things that I can't do that. And we did have a good conversation about that, and I feel in the case of my wife, who already at that point knew that I felt much like a woman most of the time, that was a different setting and a different situation. When it comes to telling my daughter, I just told her up front that Dad felt like he was a woman and he was going to transition, and she was very accepting of it. She was about 9 or 10, and she was much more accepting of that than anyone else that I had seen. And she has been very accepting throughout the whole ordeal. And I'm very happy and really appreciate the way that she has stepped up to the plate and done that. Now, as far as telling my brother, I also used more of the direct approach. We were going duck hunting, and I looked at him and I said, I am going to transition to become a woman. And he looked at me and says, I have known that you wanted to be a woman for a lot of years. He says, it's going to be pretty tough for me to go duck hunting and hunting with a woman. And I said, is it going to be any different to go hunting with me as a woman as it was to go hunting with Mother as a woman? And he thought about that for a while, and he says, oh no, I guess not. And he's been very accepting, but he lived through the aftermath of me telling my mother when I was 12 or 13 that I was a woman, wanted to be a woman, wanted to be a girl then. He lived through the aftermath of my college days when I tried to attempt to be transition. And so he already knew of my inner feelings towards transitioning. The last one is, how did I tell my wife's family? Both my mother-in-law and father-in-law were deceased at that point in time, so I just sat down and wrote my wife's brothers and sisters a letter explaining that I was going to transition. I got all kinds of reaction back from them. I heard back from just about all of them when I wrote them a letter. They said I got a very positive response from my wife's sister, and I got very negative responses from my wife's brother saying that that was not right and I shouldn't do it, and it was not part of what I should do. However, they have all, after having thought about it for a while, come around, and they still accept me and they still talk to me, and it is a relatively easy thing to be around them. And I'm appreciative of that fact and that treatment that I've got there. So what would I tell you if you are getting ready to come out? I would say my experience is that the direct approach, where you sit down on the side of the bed or in the living room and tell someone that you are going to transition to become the sex that you desire has not really worked too well for me. The best thing which has worked for me is writing a letter explaining that you are going to transition and that tell them when you're going to do it and give them time to digest it. With my friends, that's what I did. I sent all of them an email telling them I was going to transition and gave them time to think about it before they came face to face with me. And I really believe that's the best. Anytime I have told someone face to face up front, I have had a lot of problems with that scenario. The only successful case of that was my wife, and she had known of my feelings and she had known about my situation when I was 23. She had known about the whole situation for a long time, so it was not hitting her as a first time going through, and you have to remember that. I think the very best way to handle it is still to tell them in a letter or in an email so that they have time to process what's happening instead of react to what's happening. Well, that's my take on this week's topic, and if you have a comment, please leave it in the box below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you again next week. Bye.